TitleMatchNetwork.com.
You also worked a little bit out in California. What was that like? I know you worked with John Tallis and Freddie Blassie out there.
Oh, it was an interesting time. You know, back in those days, it was. I did a couple little things. When I came in as Bruno's protege, Bruno wanted me to get a little polish, so I wouldn't embarrass him. Because if you were Bruno's protege, you'd have to be, good. So I went to, I think, British Columbia for a little while and got a little bit and came back. And then they sent me out to California for, 5 or 6 months. And it was fun there. It was one of them things where you were home every night and had a good time. And I enjoyed, kind of like being a gypsy, but you got to check out the world. And, Malibu was fun. I lived in Malibu there and out there, I bumped in, to stars, so it was fun. But I had one cool story that I'll never forgive myself for when I was out there. I did a match. I had some cool matches out there with Chavo Guerrero. I think one with Piper and maybe someone else. But I have a match with somebody, and I go back and I get a letter from this guy. Would you please give me a call? I want to talk to you about being in a movie. So I call the guy and I go meet him, and he gives me the script and he says, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm making my first movie. It's a low budget picture, but I like the way you move for a big guy, and I'd like you to play this part." So I take the script home and I read it. And I'm killing people in the desert, eating babies, and I'm going, "What's this stupid nonsense?" And the guy wanted me to go out for 3 weeks in the desert, and a low budget was $1,500, $500 a week to go do your own stunts in the desert and all.
Right.
I said, "I make more money than this, hardly doing anything wrestling." So I told him, I didn't hurt the guy's feelings and tell him the script sucked.
Right.
So I said, "Look, I've really got the schedule. I can't do this." Well, his name was Wes Craven. It was his first movie, The Hills Have Eyes.
Wow.
And he wanted me to be in it, and I turned him down. That's how stupid I was. But we didn't know he was Wes Craven at the time.
Right.
So,
wow.
But then, I was in California a few months. It was fun. But then I came back to the WWWF. I was in Florida for a week there. It was fun in the old days.
Besides being Bruno's protege, was there anybody back then that you looked at and you tried to pattern yourself after? Or who besides Bruno, who'd you learn the most from?
There was a bunch of guys that would help me. Strongbow was very, helpful in telling me a lot of things. He was very smart to psychology, and even guys like Savoldi. Strongbow was probably one of the biggest helps. But in those days, a lot of guys, really wouldn't say much to you. What I did was I looked at every guy that was over. I looked at Bruno, and I looked at Strongbow, and I looked at whoever the bad guys were, and I figured out for myself why they got over and other guys didn't. Because Bruno didn't do that much. A couple arm drags, he worked the guy in a hammerlock, and he'd sell, and then he put him in a bear hug, and that was it. But because he looked the part of a Bruno, that's all he had to do. Strongbow looked so much like an Indian that all he had to do was dance around and put somebody in a sleeper. But the bottom line to all these characters was people could fantasizably believe in them. When you saw Bruno, you could believe he could walk through a wall because he looked like it.
Right.
When you saw Strongbow, you believed he could put you to sleep in the Indian deathlock because he looked just like an Indian.
Right.
When you saw Professor Tanaka, you hated his guts and knew that if he gave you a karate chop, you could die because he looked like he could. And what I got from all these guys is what I put in the Larry Zbyszko character for years, because the more I wrestled, the more the times changed where less and less people, took it serious. More and more people were smartened up how it worked. And it took a lot of drama out for him, but I got him anyway because of what I stole from these top guys. And the secret was simple, that no matter what they thought of wrestling, they believed Larry Zbyszko was a real asshole. So when I walked into the arena, they didn't give a shit if I was with Tommy Rich or anybody else, or if wrestling was fixed. They went, "Oh, this guy, he's just an asshole. He's just a real asshole. I want to slap him." So So I always got heat and I always got a reaction, and I never had to do a lot because I already did what had to be done. I got the people emotionally to get involved. I was a big fan. I was, one of these kids that was kind of raised in the early days of television. Actually, this kind of story is in my book.
Right.
It's going to be really cool. But, when I was raised as a kid, it was the thing that to be the good guy, to be the hero. You grew up to Supermans and Batmans, and everything was nice, the Lone Ranger and all that stuff. So when I was maybe 12, 13 years old, we moved to Pittsburgh. Family picked up in Chicago and moved out to Pittsburgh. And that was the first time I saw wrestling on television, studio wrestling out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm sitting there, a little kid, and I was watching it, and this one guy stuck out, and there he was, Bruno. I mean, it looked like a gorilla. And it just got in my blood. And when I was 13 years old, after watching, wrestling a little bit, I became such a fan that was what I wanted to be. I remember walking into my guidance counselor, like the first year of high school, in ninth grade, and the counselor says, well, what do you want to be? And I said, I'm going to be a professional wrestler. And you can see this guy go like, I don't believe they had a curriculum for that. And he had no idea what to say. So he kept trying to make excuses like, well, those guys are really, like big. You sure you want to be it? Because I was like a little skinny, pimply-faced kid, like most other kids at 13. But that was my life's quest. I saw it on TV at 13, made up my mind to do it. And then I started wrestling actually back in Pennsylvania. It was one of the few states that offered it, in the junior program. I think I started in 8th grade back in like 64 or something. So I just started wrestling there and wrestled in high school, and then the story goes on. But that was it. I was a mark.
So I guess what are some of your early memories of, I guess, when you first started getting on shows and stuff like that? Did it take a while to pick up the psychology of the business and stuff?
Yeah, it took a while for the psychology because the psychology wasn't something a brand new guy thought about. I'll tell you, the very first experience I'll never forget. At that time, I was starting in, Bruno owned that Pittsburgh territory, but he just sold it to Guido. And I was starting off on some little shows around the Pittsburgh area before I ever went to the WWWF.
Right.
And my very first show was in some little high school during the winter time, somewhere outside of Pittsburgh. Huh. So I go down, I'm in the dressing room, and I got the boots on and the tights on, and I'm ready to go. And back in the old days, there wasn't a lot of costumes. And Bruno never had one. I never had a costume either. I just had the trunks and the tights.
Right.
The old school look, I guess, for most guys, or a lot of guys. So anyway, here's the first thing you think about. We're about psychology. The guy says to me, "Okay, you're on first." Well, I kind of get really nervous. I don't want to be on first. Put me on second. I don't want to run out there first.
Right.
My very, very first match, I'm not going out there first.
Huh.
So they put someone else on. So that bell rings. So I go, okay, I'm ready to go out. And I was nervous. I mean, you don't. Hard to explain how I was so nervous. I mean, as strong as I was at 21 years old, I could barely, walk up the steps and walk out. Man, I was so nervous and weak. As soon as I walked out, and this place was packed, you probably had a couple thousand people in this high school. But what you notice is I walk out like this, and everybody's staring at you, but they're all dressed. They got coats on and pants on and clothes on, and you're walking, and I felt naked. I felt so naked that I'm walking out in front of thousands of people, and everybody is dressed. And I got no clothes on. I might as well be a damn stripper.
Right.
I got these little tights on and nothing. And that was the first feeling I ever got, was naked to the world when you ran out there in front of the...
It's a good name for a book.
Then I was tired. I was so exhausted from nerves getting into the ring. I wrestled this guy. What the hell was his name? Buddy something, one of the little Canadian guys. And as soon as we tied up, he said, "Chinese armbar." I had no idea what the hell. I think it was a rib because I just froze. I went. So, but that was it. Naked to the world. I'm a real nervous wreck. Psychology. That didn't come till down the road.
TitleMatchNetwork.com